All right, we are continuing our series, Safe in the Arms of Jesus. Our theme is found from Psalm 91, verse 14. God, speaking of his people, says, "Because he has loved me, I will save him. I will set him securely on high because he has known my name." God promises protection and comfort to those who love him and obey him. Today's focus, Jesus gives us peace and security. So we're going to go ahead and read the fourth Psalm, please.
Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have relieved me in my distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. O sons of men, how long will my honor become a reproach? How long will you love what is worthless and aim at deception? But know that the Lord has set apart the godly man for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. Tremble and do not sin. Meditate in your heart upon your bed and be still. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness and trust in the Lord. Many are saying, who will show us any good? Lift up the light of your countenance upon us, O Lord. You have put gladness in my heart, more than when their grain and new wine abound. In peace I will both lie down and sleep. For you alone, O Lord, make me to dwell in safety.
Thank you. All right, so a little bit of background. The fourth Psalm is from Book 1 of the Psalms, a selection of Psalms which are focused on prayers of faith in adversity. David is the author, and this was written during a time of great distress in his life. Now, we have a lot of options to choose from for times that David had a lot of distress in his life. He had reason for many sleepless nights. He spent years on the run, maybe as many as 7 years on the run from King Saul, who was trying to kill him as king, and he was responsible for hundreds of followers at this time. I mean, imagine being chased by an army of thousands, and you and your 400 or 600 guys are trying to escape from them. You help out one town from their enemies because they're being attacked, and then they rat you out to the king. It was a really stressful time, really frustrating time. As king, he was responsible for the safety and welfare of an entire nation. I mean, he goes from 600 plus their families to the entire nation of Israel. And then he had his own moral failures that caused problems for himself and for the nation of Israel. His family was a mess. I mean, you'd be hard put, and I can think of one family that I know that comes close, but you'd be hard put to find a family as messed up as David's family. Just one example, his son Absalom declared himself king and tried to kill David, his father, the rightful king. And we don't know for sure, but many historians think that this psalm was written when David was on the run from Absalom. I mean, imagine your son's coming with an army and he needs to kill you so that he can be king, but because he's declared himself, king, and you take your household and you just kind of grab everything you can and you run. And it's very interesting when you read the account, because David leaves behind basically he leaves behind a spy who says, no, don't really follow him right now because he's ready to fight. And that saves his life. And it's really interesting reading that, because they are literally on the run for their lives. And so it's possible that this psalm was written at that time, or that he was thinking through these things. David wrote his psalms reflecting on his experiences as a shepherd, a soldier, and a king. And if this psalm was written during the time of Absalom, his rebellion, David's not a young man anymore. I mean, we always think of David, I think sometimes we cut him off at the age that he probably was when he killed Goliath, and that we probably think of as way too young because of the pictures that we've seen. He would have been somewhere around 17, 18, too young for the army, but not just a little kid. And so at this point, he's probably in his mid to late 50s. So again, it's a whole lot different on being on the run when you're 25 than being on the run and sleeping in the cave and on the ground when you're in your late 50s. All right, so verse 1 here reads, "Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have relieved me in my distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer." So here we have David crying out to God because of his distress. And this is an earnest but confident cry for help. And that's what really struck me here. the confidence in this. It's not a demand, it's a confidence. Why was David confident that God would hear his prayer? He'd done it before. Yeah, he'd done it over and over. And when David would consider what was going on, he would remember, God saved my life so many times. Literally saving his life, because he fought in so many battles. God saved him, protected him, and he could be confident and look back on that and be confident that God would continue to be with him. And he could remember specific trouble and specific answers to prayer, and have that confidence that he could depend on the kindness of God to answer his prayer in this trouble as well. In Psalm 17, verse 6, David writes, I have called upon you, for you will answer me, God. There's that confidence. And I wonder sometimes in my prayers, I'm kind of like, do I have that same confidence? It's kind of like, well, if I'm praying right, or if I'm doing, if I'm in the, if I'm okay with God now, maybe he'll answer me. We can go to God with the same confidence and say, I have called upon you. I'm calling upon you now, because I know you will answer me. And I read that confidence, and it's pretty intense there as he's praying to God. As king, David was surrounded by advisors, bodyguards, an entire army, and yet he knew that his peace and serenity was not found in any of that, in any of his own strength, but in God. So it's not in circumstances, it's in God. And we've all experienced distress in our lives. We've also all experienced God's mercy in our lives. And so we can, as David did, we can use God's past mercies to build our confidence in his mercy for our present troubles. And maybe things are pretty good right now. Troubles are going to come. That's just how life is, whether you're in Christ or not. Troubles come along, but we can have confidence in his mercy, because all of us have lived long enough to know he's been with us before.
I think it's interesting that David looks back, and in his mind he expresses for our edification to see that he remembers what God has done before, and that God is capable still.
Yeah. Sometimes when I pray, and I've heard other people kind of pray this way too, kind of surprised when God answers prayer. It's there's no surprise here. God answers prayer. Now, he may not answer it the way we want it.
But we need to look back like David
does,
to remember all the times
absolutely
that God has answered our prayers.
Absolutely.
And then we can have a greater confidence when we're approaching.
Yeah. And also that helps us praise God. It helps us glorify God. Because when I look at my prayers, and I'll get to this, I think eventually in this series, that I tend to say, okay, I've got my thank yous, and I've got my I wants, but where's the praise? Where's the glorifying? And when I read how David wrote, and I'm kind of like, when I read doxologies in the Bible, I'm kind of like, why can't I pray like that? Practice, I think. But anyway, let's go ahead and read 1 John chapter 5, verse 13 to 15, please.
These things I have written to you, so you who believe in the name of the Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life. This is the confidence which we have before him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us in whatever we ask, we know that we have the request which we have asked from him. Thank you.
And again, John is writing so that we have confidence. He wrote that, First John was his listeners would have confidence in Christ. And that is where our security is. When I have confidence, I feel pretty secure. I feel pretty firm on things. We know where we're going. We know who is taking care of us. That's security. That's peace. When you know these things without a doubt, and it's been proven in the past already. And that's why I study the Old Testament. And I think it's so important because we see every single promise kept. And so when we have promises that maybe all my promises haven't been fulfilled yet, certainly, I haven't seen heaven yet, but I can have absolute confidence in those promises because God has kept every single promise. 1 John 5, verse 13 to 15.
I missed that.
Excuse me. Okay. All right. Any comments before we keep on going here? All right. So verse 2 says, O sons of men, how long will my honor become a reproach? How long will you love what is worthless and aim at deception? But know that the Lord has set apart the godly man for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. So David takes a different tone in Psalm chapter 3, where he is also praying to God about his enemies. And if you turn back one page, actually not even a page, verse 7 says, Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for you have smitten all my enemies on the cheek. You have shattered the teeth of the wicked. He takes a very different, it's interesting that he takes and again, I don't know for sure when these were written, but he takes a very different approach in this psalm. David doesn't seek vengeance on those who slander him. Instead, he asks, how long? How long will his opponents keep acting in this ungodly way? David's reputation is being attacked with lies. If this is the time of Absalom, Absalom has spent months telling people, oh, if only I were king, I would make things right. Oh, too bad you can't see the king because he just isn't doing anything, is he? I mean, he spent months at least, standing at the gate as people are coming in to present their case to David, the king, and intercepting people and saying, hey, I sure would have taken care of this in your favor. But he would tell both sides the same thing. So again, he's being a little skunk. But so if this is who David is writing about, he's wondering how long, because a lot of people lied about David. When David is approaching Saul at one point, when Saul is chasing him, David says, who are you listening to that has told you these lies about me, that I'm trying to hurt you? You know that's not the case, and I can prove it because you were just in this cave and you were in my power. And here's the hem of your robe to prove that if I wanted to hurt you, which is what you believe, I could have done it. And so people have lied about him. Nabal lies on, imagine all the good things that David did, fighting battles for Saul and protecting Nabal's sheep, all these good things, protecting these towns that then rat him out. And he does all these good things. And how is he thanked? People lie about him or turn on him, or it's just kind of frustrating that, no good deed goes unpunished could be written about David. But instead of asking for vengeance, he asks how long? How long will his opponents keep acting in an ungodly way? Now, we have all been, we've all lived long enough to have someone lie on us. It may have been at work. That's fun. I actually came around the corner one time, busted somebody lying to my boss about me, and I would just say, oh, I wish you told me about that. But anyway, I was just kind of able to just, so sweetly tell them they never mentioned that ever to me. So again, but you don't always get that opportunity. It may have been, these lies may have been within family or even within the church. That hurts. But that happens. And it hurts when people lie about us. And it hurts even more when someone who knows better believes the lie. It's kind of like, how long have you known me? And, someone is saying something. It messes with our peace and security when people lie about us. And we have all lived long enough that has happened. If it hasn't, you've lived a very sheltered life, and I am jealous. Okay. But those are circumstances. We can't control circumstances. And that's what David is getting to here when he says, how long are they going to act that way? He doesn't say, I'm going to do something about it. He just says, how long, God? We can't control circumstances. We can't control other people. We can't control what they say or what they believe. Oh, isn't that frustrating? If I could just shake sense into somebody, boy, I would be giving people concussion, just shaking them hard enough. It's kind of like, that's got to get in there somehow. But it doesn't work that way. We only control ourselves.
Another full button draw.
I know. If I focused on controlling myself, anyway, that's a different lesson. But again, we only control ourselves. And if we're faithful to God, we can have peace and security regardless of whatever else is going around. in our circumstances, because as David says in verse 3 here, anyone who serves the Lord faithfully is special to him. The Lord listens when I pray to him. If we're obedient, if we're faithful, we don't have to worry about our circumstances. Our peace and security come from God, and God listens. Any comments here? Okay. Verse 4, tremble and do not sin. Meditate in your heart upon your bed and be still. Offer the sacrifices of righteousness and trust in the Lord. Now, who has, for verse 4, who has be angry and don't sin? You have be
I do.
angry. You have be angry. Okay. That actually struck me as interesting because I was seeing anger and trembling. I'm kind of like, how does this go together? Well, so I had to go to the Hebrew word ragaz, R-A-G-A-Z. So I'm certainly not going to write out the symbols, but it means tremble, shake, or be agitated. So remember in verse 1, David was crying out to God because he was in great distress. Now, if this is the time that they're running from their lives from Absalom, then his court was on the run with David, and they're hiding in the wilderness, not knowing what was going to happen next. Is Absalom and his army going to find us and just wipe us out? What's going to happen? Now, regardless of the specific event that this psalm is about, David is feeling very emotional. Okay, the people around him are feeling very emotional. Now, whether that's fear or anger doesn't matter, because this Hebrew word ragaz tells us that they were so upset that they were physically shaking. Have you ever been so upset that you've been physically shaking? We probably all have. And whether we were that angry or that afraid or both, some kind of combination of it, probably, this physical shaking, that's a physical manifestation that we would call fight or flight. When, as what happens as a result of intense fear or rage, and that shaking is our bodies preparing to act. Okay, so I'm so scared, I'm so angry, combination of both, that my body is shaking, adrenaline is pumping into my system, and my body is saying, you've got to act. What happens when we act on strong emotions? Nothing good, okay? Let's go ahead and read James 1, verses 19 and 20, please.
Oh, God. So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God.
Thank you. When we act because we're upset, even when we have every right to, okay, I mean, something bad has happened, most likely we're not going to act right. It's just that because, emotions are involved in it, we're just reacting. At the very least, we're denying ourselves the peace we get from God. If we take it on and say, okay, I've got to make this right, God's up there saying, excuse me, I can do this a whole lot better than you can. Sam always, from Romans 12, where it says, vengeance is mine, says the Lord, I will repay. Sam reads that and says, God's a whole lot better at it than I could be. So when you get all worked up and get those emotions and that physical need to act, it may be a bad attitude, but it really helps me sometimes to remember God is going to take care of this. God is going to make it right. And no matter what I do, I can't make it, can I say righter than God can make it? Okay. God will make it right. I can depend on that. That brings a certain amount of peace and security, because if I have to work for something, I'm going to mess it up. If I'm reacting, something bad is going to happen. But, and have you noticed that oftentimes that if we don't react, then somehow, some way we're seen as the good guy. It's kind of like, and people see, oh, those bad things were happening. Well, they sure didn't respond the way they could have. And then it's just kind of like, and then the person who did the thing is kind of like, that's the bad guy. Whereas if both people are acting and reacting, then people are kind of, okay, we've got, don't want to pick sides, blah, blah, blah. But if one person is just calm and not reacting, then the focus goes back to the one who's actually starting trouble.
Change that person too by not reacting
Yeah.
the same way they do.
And because it's a surprise. And in fact, Jesus says it's like you're heaping coals of fire on their head. And I think it's also repeated in Romans 12. I don't mind that image sometimes for some people. Uh, but again, even though my motivation's bad, it's kind of like if I can be, if I can turn around and do good for somebody, then that takes the fire, it just takes the wind right out of their sails. It takes their ability to hurt us away from them. And it gives us, and we still have that peace and security that God has promised. Whereas if we act,
Just can't take too much joy in them cold.
that's true. That's true.
I don't know. The angriest I have ever been in my life was when a close friend of mine was raped and murdered.
Oh,
If I had found the man, I would have killed him myself.
Psalms 17:18, and I remember this because Ms. Sue has said this before. Even a fool is considered wise and intelligent when keeping silent and closing their lips.
that's true. I think it was Abraham Lincoln that riffed on that one and said that, it's better to keep your mouth shut and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
But again, God will make things right. And, I'm sorry if someone's, feeling agitated because I didn't rise to the bait. Fine. I can live with that. I'm fine with that. Yeah. But again, if we act, we can take away that peace and security that we have from God. All right. So what are we supposed to do? Are we just supposed to hold it all in and give ourselves ulcers? Well, no. David actually follows with advice. He has 4 points here in verse 4 and 5. His advice, or his admonition rather, not just advice, but his admonition is to replace bad feelings with good thoughts and good actions. First, he says, meditate in your heart upon your bed. That was significant to me. He said, lay down so you can't do something stupid. Okay? You can't really do something you're going to regret if you say, I'm so upset, but I'm going to go lay down. You just can't, and for me, it's kind of as soon as I lay down on the sofa, Jack's going to jump up with me. And it's just kind of like that just kind of takes all the fire out of everything. So he says, meditate in your heart upon your bed, lay down so you can't do something you'll regret. And I have to wonder if this much older David was thinking about how he had responded to insults as a young man. In 1 Samuel chapter 25, we read about Nabal's insult to David. I mean, David was furious. In verse 22, 1 Samuel 25:22, David is so angry that he intended to kill Nabal and every single man who worked for him. He was going to go and commit mass murder. 1 Samuel 25:22. He is just that angry. He says, we're going to kill them all. And he tells his men, he takes 200 men with him. We're going to kill them all. He is that angry. And that's how he's responding to this insult. And he would have if Abigail hadn't spoken to him and stopped him. Abigail was all that. Okay. And the David who wrote this psalm is an older, wiser David who says, when something happens that's got me so worked up that I'm feeling that regaz, that shaking, go lay down, take a minute. Okay.
Kathy,
Yes, ma'am.
it says to lay down and be still.
Uh-huh. Be still is my second point.
Oh, sorry.
So the second thing, be still. Stop stomping around trying to figure out how to make things right. Because that's what I'll do. I will stomp around. It's kind of like, I've got to be able to figure out something. Surely I can act in some way. And so when you lay down, meditate on these things, and you be still, for me, a puppy's going to jump up and I'm going to be able to do a little fur therapy and, scratch him on the head. It's like, okay, scratch a little harder. He never minds, apparently. But again, stop stomping around trying to make things right. In Exodus chapter 14, Israel had just left Egypt and they looked back and the entire Egyptian army is bearing down on them. That's certain death. The Red Sea is in front of them. That's certain death. They're trapped and they panicked. They totally panicked. Let's go ahead and read Exodus 14, verse 13 and 14, and we'll see how Moses responded.
But Moses said to the people, do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will never see them again forever. The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent.
Okay. Starts and ends with stand still, be still, because they're wanting, I mean, I'm sure they're starting to, run around screaming all, I mean, the Egyptians are coming. But again, Moses says, stand still. This isn't your battle. When people come at us, when people attack us for either being a Christian or just trying to do the right thing, that's not our battle. I mean, Paul in Romans 8 goes through all the things that aren't our battle. We're not, maybe it's not Romans 8, but when he says that, our battle isn't against flesh and blood, but against principalities. We have a battle that we are fighting. We're fighting Satan and all that he throws at us. We have an adversary. My circumstances, that's not the important thing. And he says, be still and know that God will take care of things. That doesn't mean that we don't, when there's opportunity for us to calmly move on something and do something, that we don't do that. Paul, when he was about to be beaten with sticks or something like that, he said, hey, is it really lawful for you to do this to a Roman citizen? He didn't take an unnecessary beating, okay? But he used the law, in a positive way. He didn't call down fire from heaven to, zap the person, which he probably could have done, because Paul had that faith. He had that authority. He didn't do that. Okay. He didn't try to take revenge on this person. He just said, I'm going to use the law. These are the rules. You don't need to go breaking the rules now, do you? And it stopped it. But again, he was so calm about it. I don't think I would have been so calm after I'd been stretched out for a beating and, and just kind of like, yeah. But again, he knew who was taking care of things. He knew that, hey, these laws are there. I'm going to take advantage of those that God has put in place to protect me. Okay.
The way verse 14 is worded makes me feel like being silent is a prerequisite for God fighting for us.
Being still, being, all these things because we get our brains when we're not still, when we're not thinking about God, our brains are going 6 different, at least, going all kinds of different directions, especially when we're facing adversity. And, God's peace can't get through my brain and what I'm thinking when I am worked up. But if I am still, if I meditate, if I just slow down, then God's peace is able to get in there. I mean, because we can rob ourselves of peace. We can rob ourselves of the security from God, even when we're faced with something terrible. When circumstances are bad is when we most need to stop and focus on God. And he will give us that peace that we need.
Oh, I think being silent is more than not talking.
Yeah.
It's also mental silence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why he's saying meditate, focus. And again, that's this whole section here when he says, you've got bad feelings, that are just affecting you physically, mentally. Replace those with good thoughts and good actions. There's how Jesus says a parable about how there was a demon-possessed man. Well, the demon was kicked out of him. And the demon, wanders around and all. And then he comes back to the man that he had possessed. It's like, hey, wait a minute. The place is clean and swept up, but there's nothing there. I'm moving back in. Okay. We have to replace bad things with good things. We can't just say, I'm not going to have bad thoughts.
And he moved back in with all of his friends.
Yes, he did. And that latter state was worse than the first state. But again, to have that peace, we can't just say, I'm not going to think bad thoughts. I'm not going to think bad thoughts. No, we have to replace it with good things. Third, he says, offer the sacrifices of righteousness. Just because other people were acting in bad faith didn't mean that David was going to stop living a life of obedience and faith. Let's go ahead and read James 1. And I know I'm repeating verse 20, but I want to repeat 20 and read 20 to 22, please.
For the anger of man does not work the righteousness of God. Therefore, put away all filthiness and rank growth of wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. but be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves.
And then who has, so again, instead of being angry, we should focus on doing what God says is right. James goes on to give specifics for that. He doesn't just say, go forth and do good. Let's go ahead and read James 1:26 and 27.
If any man thinketh himself to be religious, while he bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his heart, this man's religion is in vain. Pure religion and undefiled before our God and Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world.
Thank you. All right. So in the context of be angry and do not sin, he says, okay, replace those negative thoughts with these positive ones. And he goes on to say, do good works. And then he says, here are some good works. Watch your mouth. Okay. Watch what you're saying. And find somebody that needs more help than you do. There's plenty of them out there. And he says, go and do something. There have been actual studies. I did a little Google research. It was kind of funny. There have been studies done that show that focusing on someone else's needs reduces negative thoughts and stressors. Amazing that what was written down 2,000 plus years ago is actually, people are saying, that works. Okay, but there's actually been studies done. It reduces stress. It reduces negative thoughts, which is just kind of funny. And then fourthly, he says, trust in the Lord. Let's go ahead and read Proverbs 3, verse 5 to 8, please. Proverbs 3, 5 to 8.
Trust in Jehovah with all thy heart, and lean not upon thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct thy paths. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear Jehovah and depart from evil. It will be health to the head, and navel and marrow to thy bones.
Okay, so there are real, tangible, physical benefits to living life not in reaction to circumstances, but focused on doing what God says is right. I mean, there's health benefits to that. That's amazing. There's mental health benefits to that. Amazing how God looks out for us. He says, okay, I know all this problem is going on. Think about these good things and go help this person over here. They need more help than you do right now anyway. And it helps.
Bodies can respond to our mind.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, verse 6. Many are saying, who will show us any good? Lift up the light of your countenance upon us, O Lord. Let's see. Let's go ahead and read Judges 6, verses 12 and 13, please.
The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, the Lord is with you, O valiant warrior. Then Gideon said to him, O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our father told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian.
Okay. Again, when bad things happen, this is nothing new. When bad things happen, it's tempting to wonder, where are the blessings that God promised? Where is God right now when I'm hurting? That's been a temptation from the beginning, it seems like, and we can look at these different examples, because again, and here, David is saying, many are saying, who will show us any good? Where's the good stuff? God, why aren't you blessing us? And David has an answer. We have joy, we have peace, we have security in God, regardless of our circumstances. Circumstances aren't important. What is important is knowing that God is always with us. Any comments here?
Kathy, our prayers aren't always answered,
No.
but we have to still trust in the Lord and know that maybe our prayer wasn't for the right thing, but
Or maybe God has
works
something else going on. Yeah.
everything out. Yeah, he works everything out.
We always have the answer, either maybe later.
Yes, no, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes,
we're not.
Could be even no.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. It could be no.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, technically he does answer our prayers. It's just may not be what we
Exactly.
We're not what we're looking for. He's not answering it the way we want it to be
Mhm.
answered.
If we did
The
not
reason
have
it's
the
not
book of
answered.
Job, if we did not have the example of Job, think of how much harder our lives would be. That we can't look to someone who went through more than we can imagine, lost everything, everyone, even had his friends turn on him, and still his faith remained in God. Imagine how much more we would struggle without that example. And yet, if you ask Job, he would say that God said no in answer to his prayers. Although, God did bless him later on, but he would say, initially, God wasn't answering my prayers the way that I wanted. But think about where we would be without that example.
Kathy,
How God uses things. Yes.
God, we say answer our prayers. God directs and guides us and blesses us. And sometimes that wasn't our prayer, and it should have been.
Yeah, sometimes. Absolutely.
Kathy,
Uh-huh.
uh, these people, these people were looking for something they could see.
Yes.
They were saying, "Who will show us any good thing?"
Right. Where are my blessings?
And David understood the unseen blessings of God,
Absolutely.
and that's where these people were getting in trouble because this this idea of wanting to see something uh, led to worship of idols.
Oh, yeah.
They wanted to see an idol, so they would make a golden calf or they would
Mhm.
make a carven image out of a piece of wood. They wanted to see something.
Sure.
But and if you'll have somebody read 2 Corinthians 4:18, uh, that talks about the seen and unseen things, and the the seen things are temporary, the unseen things are eternal.
Yep. Yep. uh, says verse 17 says, for momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond all comparison, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. That was actually one of the verses that hit the cutting room floor because I didn't think I had time for it, but that's a good one, so it needed to be in there. All
And
right.
that's what led these people to not be servants of God and cause
Right.
David trouble.
Yes. Verse 7 says, you have put gladness in my heart more than when their grain and new wine abound. In peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me to dwell in safety. Now, David lived at a time when most people were one bad crop away from starvation. I mean, this was a serious thing. And so it's understandable that an abundant crop, that would bring with it feelings of peace and security. Well, David is saying that's not really where it is. That's not where peace and security are found. And he says, because he says, you have put gladness in my heart more than when there is an abundance of grain and new wine, more than when we have plenty to eat and drink. You have put gladness in my heart that far exceeds that.
Sometimes we can look back on things that we've asked for that were very important to us and realize that if we had gotten what we prayed for at that time, it would not have been good for us.
That's true. David's joy could be constant regardless of circumstances because it was from God, not what was going on around him. David knew from verse 3 that the Lord hears when I call to him. We can have that same confidence. Because of that confidence, David had peace and security. Whatever the adversity was, right at this point, I mean, if he was out in the wilderness wondering, is Absalom going to catch up with us and kill us? He still had peace and security. Regardless of his circumstances, he could sleep safe in the arms of God. And that's just an amazing feeling. Nothing that we can't have too. We've all had difficulties. Problems may come from our circumstances, strangers, neighbors, friends, family, even within the church. And I got to say, that's when it really hurts. But if we focus on these temporary problems, we will lose our peace and security. we have all this noise in our heads, all this focus on everything that's going around, like 2 Corinthians says, all on the temporary, then God's peace is crowded out. We've checked it out. I mean, it's our choice there. John 16, verse 33, Jesus said, "These things I have spoken to you so that in me you may have peace. In the world you have tribulation, but take courage. I have overcome the world." That's past tense. That's already done. I mean, when I'm thinking about all these troubles that come up, Jesus has already conquered. He says, "I've already taken care of it. I've already made it right." I mean, from God's perspective, it's already taken care of. It's already been made right. Whatever happens to us, we can remember how God has rescued us in the past and approach God in prayer, confidently knowing that He is our peace and our security. Hebrews 4:16 tells us that because of Jesus, we can approach the throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace for help in the time of our need. I mean, think about the old temple. They had the women's court, and these are the places where you could go, and then the priest could go into the holy place, and then the high priest once a year could go in the Holy of Holies. There was a separation, layers of separation between the people and worshiping God. And it says here in Hebrews 4, we approach the throne of grace with confidence, right there to God. And that's just an amazing thing. And just knowing that right there, just the peace, the serenity, the confidence. When bad things happen, we can decide to control what we think and what actions we take, because we know that our peace and our security, they're not something that we make happen. I mean, even if I could just, react every single time something happened, that's not going to get me peace and security. Peace and security come from being obedient to Jesus Christ. Any thoughts before we finish up here? Okay.
We always put our mouth, not necessary to really bring peace most of the time.
Absolutely.
You may be satisfied that, okay, I got you this time.
So, right.
But what did that really solve?
Right. Bad things are going to happen in this life. That's just the case. It happens to everybody, Christians and non-Christians. That's what boggles my mind about people who refuse Jesus. It's kind of, how do you survive without Jesus? We can't control the bad things that happen, but we do control how we respond. That takes practice sometimes. Sometimes it takes years of practice, but that's on us. That we control how we respond. And we can be still because Jesus is the source of our peace and security. We can say, all this other stuff that's going around, that's all right. I mean, it's not all right, but it doesn't have to change who I am or where I'm going or where my peace comes from, because Jesus is the source of our peace and security. In Philippians 4, Paul basically repeats David's admonition to replace bad feelings with good thoughts and good actions. And so I'm going to finish with Philippians chapter 4, verse 6-9. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and pleading with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence and if anything worthy of praise, think about these things. I mean, he just doesn't make a list that we read through as fast as we can. He says, think on these things. Don't think about the bad things. God's going to take care of those. Focus your thoughts on good things. And then he goes on to say, as for the things you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things. Okay. Think the good thoughts, do the good things. What's the conclusion of that? And the God of peace will be with you. Thank you very much for your time and for your comments.